We're playing with toys out at Dad's shop today. This is a model steam engine that a good friend of mine, my dad's name was Dan Elder, when he had a machine shop in his garage, and in his 80s he started building some model steam engines, buying the kits and machining them there in his shop. Kind of neat. That's not what our video is about today. Our video is about these two lanterns that Dad's messing with over here. Those two lanterns were actually both my grandpa's. Here, I'll shut this off before the air compressor kicks in and starts making all kinds of noise again. Those two lanterns were actually both my grandpa's lanterns. He bought both of them new. And what year are they?
59 and 60, I think. This is a 59.
That one's 59. This one is... No, this is 9 of 59.
Well, that's what this one is too.
So these two lanterns were bought by my grandpa with the purpose of using them on his boat. Well, here, we'll go back here into the office and I'll show you a picture. He had a boat that's in this picture that he built a wooden cab on, and that's what he would go out and fish overnight in that boat. And we got another really grainy picture back here in the back that I'll take to show you, where you can barely see the brackets that he built.
That was a 5-horse motor on that, an 18-foot wooden boat.
So it probably didn't go very fast.
That motor's a 1957, and he built the cabin in 59.
We got another picture back here of the boat. That's when it's on the back of his old Suburban. And it's a really grainy photo, but in the photo you can just barely see right there and right there. Those are the brackets that those two lanterns hung on, and he would that would be his fishing lights while he was out fishing all night. Okay, so I wiped those down just a little bit while the furnace was running. So when my grandpa would get off work, he had to work till noon on Saturdays, and when he would get off work on Saturday at noon, he would go, what'd you say, he'd go buy 2 gallons of gas?
Yep.
He'd go buy 2 gallons of gas and enough oil to put in the gas for his
a pint of oil
outboard, and he would go home, get his boat, and then, so my grandma, she would have some food packed.
Yeah, sandwiches, and usually he took a peach or some kind of a fruit to eat on in the next morning when you get up and get around, and some water and a jug of coffee.
Thermos full of coffee. So he'd take that with him. He'd go out and fish all night long on Saturday night until middle of the morning, Sunday morning. And by that point, he'd usually have between 90 and maybe 120 catfish that he had caught. And then he would come home, and when he got home, he would go to bed, and Grandma and any of the kids that were old enough would clean all those fish.
Yep.
And the fish that they had cleaned, they would put them in cardboard milk jugs. They'd have cardboard milk jugs that they cut the top off of, and they would drop the fish down in there so they were standing up on end in there, so they were completely covered in water, and then put them in the freezer, and that's how they stored their fish. So my grandpa died in 1973, and I wasn't born until 1979, so I never knew him, but my dad had this lantern that was his, and my Uncle Marv, which was the second oldest kid, had this one. They each saved one of his lanterns, and neither one of them had been used in years and years. They'd both just been put up and saved. And Dad has talked about his before and had said, oh, I'm not going to get it running, I'm just going to leave it set on the shelf. But then my Uncle Marv said, well, will you see if you can get this one going? I want to get it up and running. And I said, yeah, I can do that. And then Dad said, well, if you're going to get one going, we might as well get them both going. So we're going to see if we can get both of these lanterns back up and running.
They were ordered and bought new from Herder's catalog.
Yeah, so they were mail ordered. So that's kind of funny that they have the exact same date, but who knows, herders might have had a whole warehouse that they stocked up on and got a whole bunch of these in their warehouse, and then might have took them a couple years to sell them all off.
I'm sure they're at least a year apart when Dad got them.
So they were definitely purchased a year apart, but they are both 9 of 59
Yep.
lanterns. So let's pull these apart. While the furnace was running, I already wiped them down a little bit. I put a little bit of fuel in them. The one that my Uncle Marv had seems like the pump's gonna work, and the one that Dad had, the pump won't pump. I tried spraying a little WD-40 down the oil hole and it did nothing. So we're going to pull the pump out of this one. If it's shot, I've got replacement leather pumps or leather cups for the pump. So if we have to, we can replace it, but I'm guessing it's just super dried out and going to need to be spread out a little bit. Yeah, the leather doesn't look too bad, and it's already had that WD-40 on it for 10 or 15 minutes now, so if it was really stiff, it's already softened up quite a bit. So I think just spreading the cup out a little bit will probably make it work. Often if the leather's in good shape, but it's been dried up and not had any oil on it for 30 or 40 or 50 years, all you got to do is spread it out a little bit. Yep, there, it's making contact now and feels like it's going to pump up. So that was an easy fix. Now I got oil all over my hands. All right, let's put these screws back in here. The funny thing is, this has got the two tiny little screws, and the other one has the bail. So I wonder if possibly that's a whole replacement pump that's been put in there at some point. It's not a modern one because they would have aluminum pump assembly, but it might have been a replacement one back in the 60s or 70s possibly, and still had the brass handle on there. All right, we'll take both of these apart enough to get in there and inspect the mantle good. Maybe I will. Come on. Take both of these apart enough to get in there and make sure they both got mantles on them. But I don't know if they've got holes in them or they've both been setting for a long, long time. Ooh, that glass is dusty. And this one's got a big old crack in it. So I don't know. We'll just be gentle with it and clean it up a little bit and put it back in there. But who knows if it'll hold together once it heats up. I'm sure we probably got other lanterns that we could get a good glass for it if it comes apart. I hate to be too aggressive because this mantle looks like it's all in one piece, so I'm going to very gently wipe some of the dust loose on it and try to blow a little bit of the dust out of there, and that's all I'm going to do right now. Dad's going to clean up the glass on that one, and then we'll do the same thing with the other one. I'll just pull it apart, clean the glass, check that mantle and see if it looks like it's all still in one piece. And if it is, I'm going to try to light both of these on the mantles that were already in them. And set everything lined up here so we get the correct parts back on each lantern. Not that it makes a big difference. Ruh-roh, that didn't sound good. Dad was just cleaning the glass and I heard tick, and that
Super clean.
crack went the rest of the way around. So
Super glue.
Yep.
I don't have any here.
Well, this lantern has an Instaclip mantle in it, so that's at least from the 90s. So we must have tried to get this one going back then. But this one does pump up. Dad's will pump up now that we have got the leather spread out in it. So we'll at least get pressure in them. They both got replacement fuel caps on them. So at some point, the cap gasket probably went bad. And back in the day, you didn't screw around with putting a new cap gasket in. Ooh, the check valve's leaking on this one. Maybe pump it a little more. Sometimes they'll come around. Nope, it's leaking pretty good. So I'm gonna try something that works sometimes and doesn't work sometimes for a check valve that's leaking by. Sometimes you can get by with, you got the fuel cap loose, so there's no pressure in there. You can take a little can of WD-40. You can take a big can of WD-40 too. I don't mean you have to have a little one, but take a can of WD-40, line that straw right up with the hole that goes down the center of this, and try to get some WD-40 to pass right through the center of that, and that's going to go all the way down to the bottom of that pump tube and make a pool of WD-40 down there. And then you can pump, and it's going to push that WD-40 through into the fount of the lantern. And sometimes just that little shot of juice through there will be enough to make that check valve hold. Freeze it up, and it's still leaking. Right now we got one that'll pump up and one that will use the Amish fuel cap on, but I think we can still proceed and see if we can get both of these to light up after setting for years and years. Okay, well, we'll put some pressure in this one with the Amish fuel cap. Oh yeah, I didn't shut that. Close that so we got a positive seal that won't leak the pressure back out. We'll pressurize that one up. This one I already pumped up, and it feels like it's still got good pressure in it. So now I wonder if the generators are plugged on these. I should have put air in them before we put fuel in it so you can just pass air through them, but I didn't do it, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the tip cleaner on each of them a couple times before I try to light them, and just try and see if it'll light up. If it doesn't pass any fuel, then we might have to pull the generators and clean them. It's hissing. Typically, if you shake them and they light like that, that means that the assembly that goes down into the bottom of the tank might be plugged up and just needs to be taken out and cleaned. But sometimes just running a little fresh fuel through them will clean that up too, and you don't have to pull it out. So I always, if they light like that, I'll run a tank or two of fuel through them first, and then if they still don't clean up and start working correctly, then I'll pull it all apart. But once I shook it, it lit right up, and man, it's bright. I'm not even going to put the broken globe back on that one right now. I'll just set the top back on it. we'll find a good globe to put back in that one, or we'll just glue that one back together if it's just going to sit on the shelf. It's smoking a little, but there was a lot of dust in there, and I didn't get very aggressive cleaning the dust out because I didn't want to break that mantle. But how many years do you suppose it's been since that's been lit, Dad?
I don't know if I've ever lit it. So it's been probably 50 years.
Yeah.
Oh, over 50 years.
Yeah, if it's never been lit since when his dad had it. His dad died in 1973, so.
Yeah, the last couple of years it didn't go in.
So this might be the first time that one's burned since the early 70s. We'll slide it off the side and let it burn all the dust off of it. And I feel like my uncle tried lighting this one before, but he couldn't get it to burn, or couldn't get it to burn well.
I think he said it was leaking down around the bottom, so it probably got flooded when he tried it.
Yeah. Well, we'll just try lighting it up and see what it does. If we got to do more than that, we'll go from there. Ooh, I wonder if it was leaking around that. That tip cleaner is really, really loose. We'll tighten the packing on that just a little bit before we go any farther, because that's very loose. So that might have been where it was leaking that he was talking about. And it doesn't take very much. You see how little I turned that, and now that's nice and tight. So maybe that's where it's leaking. Maybe that was the issue we had. But like I said, I don't think those Instaclip mantles came out until the 90s. So somebody, which would have been my Uncle Marv, would have tried lighting this. He probably had it out here at the shop at some point. We tried lighting it and didn't get it to go right, or it was leaking or something, so it ended up just back home sitting on the shelf. But let's try it now. Same thing, I can hear air passing through it. There we go. There we go. It's flaring up a little bit, but it's starting to get that generator heated up and burn better. The guy who cleaned these globes must have gotten in a hurry. They're still pretty streaked up. They only had like 40 years worth of dust on them. Okay, knock that off, Lantern.
That globe on.
Get the globe, get the top back on it here. Find the nut that goes on it. Wow, that was easy. Usually I fumble around trying to get the bales in the hole. That might have been flaring up a little bit because I never opened the fuel valve up there SOA too. There we go. Both of my grandpa that I never met, both his lanterns are back gone after years of just sitting on the shelf. They're burning nice and bright. Pretty cool, can't beat that. For 2 lanterns that were bought by my grandpa and then sat for decades, if you have to replace one check valve, that's not too bad. Please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching, folks.